Hello, good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. Lovely to see some familiar and new faces in the room today. Some long-standing faces I haven't seen for a while. Very nice to see you. Feel free to let us know in the chat where you're zooming in from today. I can get a sense of how far across the APAC globe we are talking. If you don't know me, my name's Rosie, and I am a lot of different titles, really. Let's go with um, HBDI Master Practitioner, Director of Learning, Psychologist. Anyway, I'm here to introduce Michael. We're going to co-facilitate today's session. Just waiting for another couple of minutes to see how many people tumble, well, not minutes, seconds, to see how many people tumble into the room. We are going to run some breakouts today in the session. So just giving you forewarning that is going to be happening. Oh, my chat's not open. That's good. Oh,
Well, I guess just while we're waiting here, hi everybody, I'm Michael. I recognise quite a few faces, a few new ones, some Kiwis, which is always good to see. So yes, welcome. And as Rosie said, we're going to be sort of taking turns and seeing where the day goes. So hang on.
all right.
And if,
Lots of different locations. I'm just looking at the different locations: Perth, Ramsgate Beach, Melbourne, Port Macquarie, Cambodia, Gympie, New Plymouth. Ooh, New Plymouth. You get a
yeah,
shout out. Pippa, are you from the council? Where are you, Pippa? I can't see your face. Where are you? No. Um,
and
so
I must just interrupt and say hi to Rod. Haven't seen you, Rod, for a long time. Good to see you.
Oh, excellent. All right, let's get started. And I will start by welcoming you to the session and also begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which I live, and pay my respects to their elders, past, present. And that happens to be the Turrbal and Yagara people in Brisbane, which I think someone else was from Brisbane. If you would also like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which you are joining us from today, feel free to do so. But this is also a session run across APAC. And so to my New Zealand audience members, I say kia ora and welcome, and also extend my respects to all of the cultures joining us today. Today's session came about a little last minute, to be honest, because the state of the world is changing and it is changing rapidly. And hence, Michael and I got together last week, right before Easter, and said, maybe we need to talk about it. Maybe we need to start talking about the ways that we're responding to uncertainty. And I'm not sure if it's showing up in your world. In fact, you would be welcome to tell me in the chat. Um, is there a lot of uncertainty showing up in your world at the moment as well? Simple yes would help me orientate to who is experiencing this. So we put our heads together, and Michael had already, of course, he had 155 in the yellow. He'd already been putting his head together about what we could do to open this conversation and help people navigate through these times. And hence today's session, a whole brain response to uncertainty was born. And so, what we're going to talk you through is how whole brain thinking can help, what uncertainty is looking like in our different contexts. Michael has very kindly put some tools together that we'll share at the end to help you bring this to life in your context. I'm going to pause there. Michael, was there anything I forgot to mention in our intro?
No, I don't think so. As I say, uncertainty is the name of the game. I just logged on to Zoom, for this session, and of course found that it's a new version of Zoom. So where everything was yesterday is now somewhere else. And that seems to be, pretty typical of, yeah, the day, the times. And what I guess started all of this, as Rosie said, was the impact that, Trump and the world and all this uncertainty is having. And, you set out to plan your day and things change, the impact it has on work, and potential things like petrol rationing. And yeah, so there was everything went up in the air. And I thought, how on earth, yeah, yeah, do we deal with it? Because yeah, I was finding it a bit tricky. So that's yeah, where this came from.
Oh, excellent. Thank you. So, that's a good segue. I have prepared a poll. Let's see if it works. Um, we have said that yes, we are here and facing uncertainty in our world. I'd love to know, and this is a type your answer in, and hopefully we're going to get a word cloud that comes up
Mhm.
either in the session or I'm going to post it in our LinkedIn group after the session. So, what one word would describe how uncertainty feels right now in your, and we are bringing this into the work context, in your work context. So, either in an organization or if you are a consultant, you could describe the experience of your client groups, like how are they showing up? What are they experiencing? I'm just going to give a minute for you to fill in that poll. Hopefully you can see it. Should have appeared as a pop-up. And I usually wait for my polls to hit about 80%, which is a high threshold, but you guys are very giving and very responsive audience. 80% isn't always what I would go for in the typical world. I'd be happy with 60. So one word to describe. Oh, we're getting there. Couple more people. I'll hit my threshold. One or two. Ah, fabulous. Oh, I've exceeded it. Oh, 86. Okay, stop overperforming now. 91. All right. I'm going to end the poll now. So if you haven't had your say and you can't access the poll because Zoom's changed on you and it's uncertain, just pop it in the chat for me. And happy to see your answer there. Let me end this poll. Let's see what happens. I haven't done a poll like this before. Is it just say that 34% of people have filled the poll in to you? It's not showing me anything exciting. Ah, all right, let's go over here. So this is let's see if I can zoom in. This is the word cloud that it's coming up through Zoom. Can you see that? Give me a thumbs up on screen if you can see that.
Yep.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks, Steph. What word does it feel like? Oh my gosh, I love that word that's orange that's coming out. Opportunity. Opportunity. There are other words though. Oh, I love the word agility, scarcity, unclear, unfocused, scary, unpredictable, unplanned, change, challenge, confusing. That's excellent. Now, I'm going to take a screenshot of that and I'm going to pop this word cloud into our LinkedIn group so you can use
Mhm.
it if you want to or not, or ask the same question. But what's really interesting is that there is a double perspective. There's two mindsets on this current context. One is the mindset of uncertainty feels like opportunity and agility. And the other mindset is that uncertainty feels like scarcity, lack of clarity, and unpredictability. And so I want to segue into can't remember my next slide, Michael. Oh, okay. Yes. This, I'm going to introduce the concept and Michael can expand on it. It's the concept that when we do feel uncertain, that we can tend to narrow our perspective, and that narrowing of a perspective can be challenging and problematic in certain contexts. And so I'm going to pass over to Michael now. We're talking about this as the narrowing effect. Would you like to talk a little bit about this, Michael?
Yes, I guess. this came about probably two reasons. Behind me, or there, where is it? There we are. You see my HBDI profile, in particular my under pressure profile. And I was interested in, I guess, what happened to me and other people, but this was me in uncertain times when I was a bit under pressure and so forth. And I was exploring that, and I was actually exploring it with, I guess, two of my friends, Chat and Claude. And it was ChatGPT who came up with the word narrowing. And yeah, I have found since he or they introduced me to it that it's a very powerful word. And I've been, I guess, reflecting on the way I think, during uncertainty and during pressure. And yes, I absolutely, narrow down my focus and kind of forget other things. So that's where it came from. Um, Rosie and I guess, then started to talk about it. And as you can see from my profile, I love the concept. I didn't know where it came from, or I didn't have any evidence about it. So Rosie went digging.
Naturally, I had to put my psychologist hat on and say, okay, well, what is the actual evidence? Thanks, that the intelligence of Michael with chat came up with this narrowing effect, and I was like, what's the evidence? Where's the proof? What does it actually look like? And so, a couple of things I want to talk to. And if you are into evidence and you want this, I actually have a reference list. Which obviously chat helped me compose in the most proper of formats. But I want to frame this by saying when we are talking about the narrowing effect, you know the Yerkes-Dodson curve, which is on the screen there of pressure. And when we are facing, sometimes pressure is actually helpful. And we need to recognize that. And in some of your responses to uncertainty, you actually said, yeah, there's opportunity, there's agility, there's positive reactions to pressure. Today, though, I want to recognize that, see where the red arrow is, that when pressure actually exceeds the bounds of performance, and this is when it actually gets into the impaired performance category. So when we're talking about the narrowing effect, we're not talking about it as the agility and the responsiveness and the positive reactions to pressure. We're talking about when it's actually starting to impair performance. I'd love to know in the chat if you're open to sharing if you've seen examples, I say this cautiously, seen examples of where pressure is impairing performance. Let's go in a work context, in a life context, where is this, what does this look like? What is this showing up as? And what we tend to notice is the evidence of it. So the evidence of it. So just a couple of points that I'll talk to. When we feel stressed and uncertain, one of the things that goes is our cognitive flexibility. So, ability to flexibly move between different thinking perspectives. And we know, if anyone's into neuroscience like I am, that prefrontal cortex starts to shut down. The Easterbrook hypothesis, which, yeah, it's Easter. We're going to talk about Easterbrook. Talks about how we focus on the narrowing effect focuses us under pressure. So we sort of start to forget what else is around us, just narrowing in on that situation. There's another word called cognitive tunneling in high pressure environments. That research comes out of aviation pilots and people in high stress scenarios. I talked about the prefrontal cortex already, and this sort of stress and pressure moves us into more habitual responses, or I often call it more instinctive thinking. So when we don't have all the options available, our thinking can become more instinctive and sometimes unhelpful and or negative. I call it hindering thinking, thinking that is hindering you. As again, I've forgotten my next slide. I think it might be the one I'm hoping. It is. So I want to link it back to HBDI because people always ask me in sessions, oh, my profile does this under pressure. Is that good, bad? What's the problem? Like, what does it mean? And the real answer is that there is no good, bad, or right or wrong shift under pressure. You can see those are 5 different thinkers, and that's 5 different responses to pressure. But something, and so, when we talk about the narrowing of thinking, I don't want you to think of that as like, see this thinker here who's going into the red quadrant, and it looks like, okay, it's just red and a bit of yellow. That's the narrowing into that quadrant. Narrowing actually means more about stuck in your pattern. So a narrowing thinking for this thinker here in the middle, they're almost equally preferred in all quadrants. So under pressure, and the inhibiting part of pressure, narrow thinking looks like constant jumping, constant changing of points of view, constant flicking between quadrants of thinking. And it can be unhelpful. So it is, I don't want you to think of it only being under pressure. Oh, I go all into this quadrant. Yes, you might, but similarly, someone else under pressure needs to consider and manifest or think about all four quadrants. And that used to be me. I actually found it so unhelpful that I intentionally have changed my thinking processes over the years I've been doing this. And I found this is the conversation where you can talk about profiles, how they help you, but also how they hinder you. And this is the language that we start to use around what's getting in the way for you, Rosie. How is it holding you back? And my example of, and anyone who was in my courses years ago and heard the story about me buying a car, which I will not repeat because it's absolutely, you just think, what was going on in your brain? I couldn't make a choice. I was paralyzed in decision because I didn't know which quadrant was the most effective to think about buying this car from. Was it price? Was it aesthetic? Was it about, what others considered and thought about my car or relationship with the salesperson? Was it all the practical elements? So I want you can think about your own under pressure thinking profile and how that can show up in helpful, but also in hindering ways, how it can hold you back. And if you want to, when you want to think about the conversation you're having, I'm just sorry, just looking at the question there. What are your thoughts when you hear people say they thrive under pressure? I think that is back to that Dobson curve where it's optimal pressure. So I think we've got to clarify pressure being the optimal amount needed for the situation, but there are times when pressure can get outside those bounds. And what's so fascinating, if I go back to that picture, sorry, wrong direction, is what causes you to go outside the bounds into where that red arrow is. That is what we need to figure out, and it's different for everybody. What causes you to go into that space? And so I think there's two conversations to have about pressure. One is, yes, pressure does help sometimes give you the energy to act or respond or thrive, but what's the impact? And then there's things like burnout, perhaps, or essentially the shutting down of that prefrontal cortex. So I do think that there is an absolute positive conversation to have around thriving under pressure. Until when? And that's what we're trying to say. Until when? When is that moment where you no longer are thriving under pressure? And how can you claw yourself back from that situation and use whole brain thinking? So I'm going to pop you into breakouts. I hope that answers the question. If you've got other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat for me. I'm just going to keep noting them as we go through. Now I'm going to pop you into breakouts, and I want you to have a chat with some colleagues. And you can either use your real world examples, or you can share these examples of these profiles above. And I want you to discuss these three questions. I'll pop them into the breakout. I'll broadcast them into the breakout when I remember how to do that. Which quadrants become overused? And this is more about in your organization and or client group. What are you noticing? What happens under pressure? What quadrants are lost or ignored? And interestingly, because we always talk about thinking in our language, it's all about the thinking behind what's happening. When you see pressure, you can only observe it through behavior. So what do you actually observe in behavior in organizational context that shows you that this is now in the unhelpful pressure category, and that we're no longer in that helpful maximizing performance space? So those are our three questions. You've got 10 minutes to do that. I'm going to ask my lovely workshop admin if you would kindly pop the breakouts on while I broadcast this into your breakouts for you to talk to. And then we'll see you back here in 10 minutes. So we had about 11 breakouts. I'm not going to ask every breakout to share, but if you had, oh, everyone's back. Let me start this again. Welcome back, everybody, to the room. We would love to hear a couple of insights. I'm looking for around 3 shares. And in true fashion, recognizing we're going to have introverts and extroverts in the room, if you would like to share, I'm not so
Well, the
interested in
Victorians are
the
still
three
going.
questions, but if you would like to share something about what came out in your group, pop your name in the chat and say, yes, I think our group had something interesting to share. Thank you, Glynis. I'll ask you to go first in 1 second. And then, and Zoe, perfect. I'm looking for one more person to share. And the other thing that I'm going to ask is questions that you might have had in your breakouts, and that's open to everyone. So if you just had some questions come up just then, you thought, actually, not sure about that. Rosie, what do you think? Can you please pop your questions in the chat so I can address them as we go through? So I have three lovely volunteers. Thank you for that. Glynis, would you like to go first? Keen to hear your insights.
For sure. Well, I was with Sally Betts and with Steph, and we talked about how that under under that sort of pressure, that the quadrant that probably gets least like really gets overused is blue, followed by green. That the like I'll give the example. I deal with training for government clients, and it's like under pressure. We don't have money for training anymore. But this is the time when people are really needing how to get through this, how to do that. So the red, the people, it's like we can't deal with you. We've just got to get on with this, and we've got to cut back on all our costs and all of those sorts of things. And and I think Sally was talking about too the green people get into planning and everything, but people don't want to talk about it. They just want to get on with it. We're really when you're under pressure as an organization, the uncertainty in the world today, as this was this COVID, really what you need to be doing is finding out how to work through change, how to bring your people on board, how to actually think how we can be flexible, how we can embrace things. We can't deal with some of the big changes, but what are the little things that we can give people wins in? How to manage this to actually be really resilient and to go really well. So we need to really use the yellow and the red, I would say, but carefully balanced with blue and green. So, but I think people really, from my point of view, go to the blue, and Sally was also saying the green. So, and this will really govern things. So I'll be quiet now.
Oh, excellent. Wonderful share. Thank you so much for sharing. I think there's a one of the models that comes to mind as you're saying that out loud is the whole brain business model. It's in the Prac portal. I don't know, Steph, if you can search for it and send them a link in the chat. But the reason the whole brain business model could be a powerful conversation piece in that context is that, yes, it talks about money and profit in the blue quadrant, but then it also talks about the risk of, let's say, not being yellow and missing an opportunity or missing a change because you didn't think in that way. So it can help reframe conversations. It just came to mind as you were sharing that. So thanks so much for sharing and for your group. Wonderful. Let's go to Zoe.
Yes. I was just
Thanks, Zoe.
capturing that hot tip about the business model because I think that's a great additional thing to look at. So I was with Gordon and Deborah, and something that was interesting was where the conversation went about different industries. In the sense that for Gordon in education, the quadrant that becomes overused is very much the yellow and the red. And for Deborah and I, we had a moment of really, because in my world of mining and construction and Deborah's world of hospitality, it was the total opposite. So that led to an interesting conversation about, what themes might be across industries, but also nuances within companies itself as to whether the total population does that or whether it's in pockets, because some of our worlds include a corporate side and a site-based role as well. So, and the lost quadrant for Deborah and I was that red aspect. So, very much a known necessary quadrant, but in practicality, the first thing that goes when blue spikes. And seemingly, the belief is that would be nice to have, the interrelational part, but we'll get to that later because right now we're putting out fires mentality.
Yeah. I love that. Thanks so much for sharing. That was a very good share because we had the complete opposite. Thank you. That's awesome. I was hoping to hear that. So in some contexts, blue green might skyrocket. In other contexts, red yellow. And then even within context in organizations, I did ask about organization wide, but within teams within organizations is not going to look the same as well. So you can use this as a lens to think about. Marie, I think you offered to share. Go for it.
Catherine asked me if I would share with the group in a very rushed request as we were coming back to the main room. So together, we had two examples of reverting to the blue-green quadrants.
Mm.
And so I was just sharing that I work with conversational intelligence, which is I'm a consultant, so with the neuroscience of conversations. And what became really interesting and clear to me just within the conversation is that if we're reverting to blue-green, what actually happens is, that's really about the facts and the form. So the kinds of conversations that we might be having when that happens is what we call a level 1 conversation, which is an exchange of facts. So people are speaking and listening, just talking and listening, and that's all there is. They're talking. However, at a level 3, what actually happens is that's what we call so that's a transactional conversation. And at a level 3, we have what we call a transformational conversation. And a transformational conversation is sharing and discovering. And Rosie, as you were sharing about the prefrontal cortex, that takes place in the prefrontal cortex. So, in my world, it would be that people are reverting to conversations from another part of the brain, which actually transactional conversations are an exchange of energy. And of course, that affects the whole energy, emotional contagion, and everything else that happens.
Mm. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. And I think it becomes, when we're in that state, when it's transactional, we start to argue with each other as well from very stuck perspectives and not be able to shift forward from that. So one of the tips that I use when I'm in a group and I notice that they're in this under pressure state and that it's becoming it's inhibiting them from moving forward, I, rather than call it out as being negative, which it's manifesting in unhelpful ways, yes, 100%. But I ask the question, what are we doing too much of, TOO? And I like to use the word of the quadrants and say, in the blue, too much focus on what? Because when we say we're focusing too much on it, it helps us reframe that we need to balance that perspective and think about something else. Someone's asking, Marie, if you could share the conversational intelligence info, which is very good. And I've met a couple of practitioners in that space recently, just serendipitously. So it's very great stuff. And I've forgotten the name of the lady who wrote the book. But if you would love to share that, Marie, that would be welcomed. So when you're seeing this manifestation of under pressure and you want to rein it in, it's about, okay, well, let's label it, let's identify it, and let's take the fear out of it. Thank you, Louise. That's who it was, Judith. It's a great model out there. So when we're thinking under pressure, even though we just recognize that, some organizations are falling blue quadrant, others are falling into the red quadrant, we do need to remind our groups that it doesn't favor one type of thinking. There isn't a norm. It isn't that this is the way we act under pressure or respond or think under pressure. But what happens is the thinking becomes more amplified and that our ability to be flexible is reduced and that we really tend to narrow in. So that's why I like the words, okay, for me personally, when I'm under pressure, too much talking, too many phone a friends. What do you think, friend A? What do you think, friend B? It's like, Rosie, stop asking all your friends what they think and just get on with it. So in your own example, in your own world where your thinking goes under pressure, what does that look like in a sense of I'm doing too much of that right now? And it might be a quadrant or it might be multiple quadrants that like I do too much of changing my mind. That was my past version of myself. Now I go fairly red quadrant under pressure. In the past, I just too much changing. Oh my gosh, did my head in. So this is a way to think about what people might think about or fixate on or narrow into under pressure. Blue quadrant, the numbers you said before, but what's certain? What do we know? What are the facts? Tell me them now. What facts do we know? Maybe but then in the yellow, it can appear more scattered and a whole lot of different ideas and concepts. In the red quadrant, there's a really interesting phenomenon that comes up, which is in the people pleasing state. So we're non-confrontational in that I say we, because this is where I sit a lot of the time under pressure, but you don't want to create tension, you don't want to upset the equilibrium, and so you hold back and you don't have those tough conversations because you're trying to be accommodating. In the green quadrant, it can look like the rigidity or the need for control. Sometimes quadrants can completely disappear under pressure and not be manifested or not be preferred to manifest under pressure. So the moral of the story is we need to recognize that we're in that space where the prefrontal cortex is not being activated, and we need to put strategies in place to reactivate the prefrontal cortex. Anyone who knows has children or young people in their world knows that you're doing that multiple times a day, reactivating their prefrontal cortex to help them self-regulate, to help them grow, to help them develop. And ironically, many of us adults need help learning that self-regulation skill as well. So this segues into Michael now, who's going to take us through a strategy, an exercise that can help us when we are stuck. I shall hand over to you, Michael.
Okay, thanks, Rosie. Yes, I mean, I've had quite a few experiences, I guess, like we all have, of narrowing, being stuck, losing my flexibility as I feel uncertainty and pressure and everything else. And it's difficult to get out of it. One very quick example is, I'm a golfer, and you can see my profile again at the back, when I hit my ball into the trees, I go into the red quadrant and I get all upset, inside my head. But what I don't do is take a calm, rational approach, because I'm so wrapped up in, oh dear, I've ruined my round, what will I do? So I always take a quick swing, and instead of losing one stroke, we'll probably lose about four. And it struck me in all of this that I've got the awareness of what happens to me under pressure, but what I needed was a strategy that I could use, and a strategy that I could use literally within a minute, because that's what happens in life. You're going along, something happens, you feel pressure, whatever it else, your world narrows, and you've got to get out of it then. And what I discovered, I guess, in my research and so forth, was when your thinking narrows, you don't need more time, you need structure. You need a very simple, quick structure to get yourself out. And we call this the 4-minute reset. I would rather now call it probably the 1-minute reset, because 4 minutes is too long. And what I've discovered is that the whole brain model is amazingly powerful if you use it within a minute. And so, as you can see where it says ask yourself, the blue, the green, the red and yellow. I just go A, B, C, D in that order. And I say to myself, what do I know for sure? God, I'm in the trees. And what can I do to adjust? I can take time, I can breathe, I can point over there and take a proper shot. Now, that might be as far as I need to go in that particular case, because if I do that, I will just chip out, and all that relief goes. Sometimes you need to go, through obviously all four, but the sequence I think is important, A, B, C, D, and do it, within 1 minute. So what I'd like you to do within 1 minute is just take a deep breath and think about a situation that you're facing right now. Could be at work, could be at home, could be social, could be absolutely anything, where there's a little bit of pressure. And just take 1 minute to say to yourself, okay, what do I know for sure what is the one or two facts that I know for sure about this situation? And then the second question, oh, what could I change? What could I adjust? What could I do differently right now in this moment? Is there somebody who could help? Is there something missing? Will it impact somebody? And then finally, what's possible? Just within 10 seconds, what haven't you thought of? And again, a couple of deep breaths kind of help this. Now, I don't know whether, Rosie, we have time to go into breakouts, do we?
Probably not, but I think what's interesting about this exercise, because I do want to get to the goodies at the end, the actual things that they can take to their world.
Yep.
I did that. I just did that just then, and I used one of your examples of the budgets being shut down. I don't know about you, but in our world of training and development offerings, like right now, it's like, nah, budget's choked, no money, can't do this. That's what we are told a lot, and our client groups are telling us that they're being told that too. It's like that thing we were doing, Rosie, it's now paused because we don't have the money. And this is the quick version of, and you guys can help me fill in the blanks because there's only me thinking it through. But so what do I know for sure? Budgets are choked, budgets are blocked. Okay. What can we adjust? Well, not all budgets are blocked. Where are budgets not being blocked? And I know an example because I was speaking to someone yesterday and they're paying exceedingly large amounts of money for mediation because and legal fees around retrenching staff. So either mediation between leaders and their employees or dealing with paying out people to get rid of them. So there is money being spent. It's just reactive money. It's, oh, we have a problem, let's spend that money there. So I'm wondering, I'm curious, is there money in your context? If I make the assumption money's not being spent, what if I go into the green and say, well, okay, where is it being spent? In what ways is it being spent? And then red quadrant, I was thinking, well, who makes the decisions about this money being spent? Is it better to pay? And I can't remember the numbers, of course, because I don't tend to remember figures off the top of my head, but the money that was being spent on this mediation would have been solved by a 6-month program around leadership. It was huge. It was a huge amount being spent on one person and a mediation issue. And I don't know if this is in your world. It's not my personal world. I'm telling the story secondhand. So what could I bring or that practitioner bring to that scenario to help reframe, rethink? And then my last quadrant was going, well, where else is there money being spent? Where else is the money out there that this can be a support to, as an example? Look, I don't think I fully got there, but it is a process. And I think if you've got a thinking partner, we could, and I'm happy to be your thinking partner if you need a thinking partner in the next couple of weeks, start to open this way of thinking. If you are stuck, your decisions feel stuck and you can't move through them. Because when I think about what we were going to ask you to talk about in the breakouts around when I forced to go through all four, like personally, I didn't really want to start in the blue and the green quadrant. I wanted to go straight to the red and yellow in my language. But it didn't take me long to get back to the other quadrants to move through this example. So have a think about your own context, have a think about your own stuck scenarios and where the thinking can shift. And hopefully, it's my next slide. Is it? No, it's not. Okay, it's not. It's coming. I've got a framework for thinking to ask questions of yourself to unlock that thinking. It's coming. But we did want to ask this first, and this is a chat share. In the chat, we'd love to hear where these stuck situations are, because if we know what they are, then we can help you help your stakeholders think through them through our whole brain language. So, we've already shared that one of the ways is that they're stuck with budgets, but what else? Where are your clients or if you're internal in an organization? And we've heard a lot about the blue and the green quadrant, but it wasn't always the case. There's another example of the red and the yellow quadrant being stuck. Can you tell us, what does this look like? Where are your clients and organizations struggling and stuck? What does it look like? Let's wait for some comments in the chat. Interesting. So budget approval, recruitment and churn, communicating change, getting good work done with less people. Oh, yes, definitely. I'm seeing that. Seeing a way out of staff being unhappy with leaders. External, yes, definitely external things. Stuck in an emotional state. Yeah, definitely. Managing demand with tight resources. Oh, just we're too busy. Finding priority and prioritizing time. Wow, okay. We could go on. So what I want you to do is to think about this situation and go through the quadrants, asking yourself the questions. And I might even take a few of them and pop them in the LinkedIn chat group and use them as alternative ways of thinking. And how we could, lack of generosity. Yeah, when resources are scarce, it's like, nah, not giving you anything. I'm keeping a hold of everything. No sharing. I'm getting that fuel. It's not going to the farmers. I'm going to go and take that fuel, fill up my fuel tanks. Yeah, very, very true. So think about this is where the next step is. Where is the thinking showing up or not showing up? How can you ask yourself 4 questions to go through a framework to do that? This is what I thought was my next slide, because these are the questions you can start to ask around the how can you elicit better thinking? So I'm going to share this as a PDF, as a JPEG in the LinkedIn group. I'm not going to go through it now, but these are the types of questions you can start to ask yourself and your stakeholder to shift that thinking from stuck to now moving forward. And so while this is a kind of one quadrant think about to go through those various questions, Michael has done a lot more work in dealing with uncertainty, response to uncertainty. And I will let you take over and explain what you've been working on.
Okay, thanks, Rosie. Yeah, what I want to overview now very quickly, because time is on the wing, is here are a whole lot of resources for you that you can, and I'll give you a link in a minute, that you can grab, download, and do what you like with. What I did was I started to, I guess, think about the issues that people are facing, and you've just filled the chat with a lot of those, and try to prioritize them. And these are the first 3 that I've worked on, and I'm going to work on a few more. But it seems, how do we deal with uncertainty? How do we be confident that we can get our way through? And it struck me, first of all, that people have to make a lot of decisions during this time, and it's hard to do. So the first sort of bucket of resources you can see is decision making in uncertain times. And that's looking not only at, I guess, an individual on their own making decisions, but how does a team make a decision with all the pressures and everything else that's mounting on them? So that's the first one. The second is what I've called options and alternatives. And this came about actually by a discussion I was having with somebody at work, and they were saying, I don't really know what to do. Should I work from home? Should I carpool? Should I catch the bus? I've got all these options and I'm not sure what to do. So that's the birth of the second one. The third is looking, as it says, about communicating and aligning, because so much misunderstanding happens when people are under pressure. I think I've said something that's clear, you misunderstand it, and the whole thing goes crazy. So the idea of these resources is I've constructed them that they are anywhere between 70 and 90 minutes to run. So they're a mini workshop, and you can run it, I guess, on your own, virtually, in a group, face to face, whatever way you like. So it's ultimately flexible. The resources assume that whoever you're going to run this with have done their HBDI. So this is to build on the knowledge that your thinkers have already got, because they understand the whole brain thinking. So you're not going to teach that. So you're really going to, start, I guess, running. So they're all easy to run, 60 to 90 minutes. There's no cost. Oh, and there are no slides. So I haven't made fancy PowerPoints, but you could probably enhance the delivery by dropping in one or two of your own. So that's the concept. Now, the concept in each one of these topics is what I said earlier, and that is that under pressure, you don't need more time, you need structure. So you don't need more time, you need structure. So in each one of these sessions, it provides, the 4-minute structure. So if you've got to make a decision, what is the appropriate structure to use and how can you use it on your own or within a group in 2 or 3 minutes? If you're trying to work out whether you should carpool or what you should do, how can you quickly come up with 3 or 4 alternatives and pick the right one or the appropriate one? And there's, using perhaps A, C, D, B, you might mix the sequence up and that's covered. And again, with communicating. So that's what these are about. The downloads are a facilitator guide, about an 8-page facilitator guide, and not a workbook, but just a 1-page handout. Quick, simple, easy, and somewhere here, I can show you. I mean, no, I won't show it, doesn't matter. I was just going to show you a 1-page handout. So that's what they're about. Now, if we go to the next slide. So introducing better thinking in the moment. This is when you haven't got time to pull out the whole brain model and do a complete walk around and everything else. So about facing uncertainty with confidence. Now, if you're interested, the easiest way is to send me an email, and my email address is there, Michael@Herrmann, and say, can you send me these facing uncertainty sessions? And if you're in New Zealand, then Andrea, and there's Andrea's email address. Okay, and I say there are going to be a few more topics, but I haven't got round to those yet. This was just, this weekend. Again, the theory behind this is in times of uncertainty, we don't have time to sit down for a 1-day workshop. So these are quick, easy, and build on what your thinkers already know. So that's it.
Thank you. So next steps, have you joined LinkedIn? Please join LinkedIn, because this is where we want to keep the conversation going. We really want to foster a community of sharing and abundance and connection. So the PDF, the JPEG picture will be in the LinkedIn group, and we can put the link in the chat. Just if you are interested, we have a new case study that has just been launched around a New Plymouth Council and their application in leadership and culture, and particularly of note for that blue quadrant audience out there, what came out of that initiative was that 58% of leaders were applying what they learned in the workshop sessions directly after the sessions with their teams, which is a huge improvement on the industry standard, which is around application between 10 to 25% after a learning session. So good on them, and that's in a case study you can access. Thanks, Steph has popped it in the chat. In the LinkedIn group, because we are about to wrap up, I will keep the conversation, as will Michael, going. I will post in there. I'm going to ask a couple of questions. This is to help you help grow the conversation in your own context and bring that impact back. If you want those resources, please email Michael or Andrea. And that is intentional. We want to open the conversation because if these resources aren't helpful or not hitting the mark, we want to know that. We want to hear that you want them, you're using them, you're not using them, and what we can do to make more of these, but really impactful resources for you as we continue. This brings us to the end of today's session. I thank you all for your contributions, your sharing, and joining the community. I look forward to seeing you in the LinkedIn group and, of course, next time on our next forum. And we, as usual, cannot wait to hear the difference that whole brain thinking is making in your world. So I will wish you the best of the rest of your Easter if you are on leave or dealing with holidays, and we will see you next time. Thank you, everybody.